So if you're here tonight, you're probably here to hear talk about how to heal a leaky gut. You may or may not know what that means. I'm going to do my best to explain it to you so that by the end of this talk, you should understand both what it means and how to heal a leaky gut. So first disclaimer, even though I'm a doctor, everything you hear on this call, whether from me or anyone else in the chat or who's speaking on the call, is information for you to consider only. It is not medical advice from me to you. Even if you happen to be one of my patients, this information is for general purposes only, and anything, any lifestyle choice or decision or change anybody decides to make is always best considered in the context of a healing relationship with a provider who you trust. So here's kind of the broad scope of what we're going to cover tonight. I tend to be tangential, other things might come in, but in general, I want you to walk away with an understanding of who I am, why I care, and why you should care about leaky guts, yours or others. I'm going to go over 5 basic kind of lifestyle choices that can improve anyone's health. And I'm going to talk about this concept of the bucket or the amount of allostatic load or stress that we all carry, because the intervention I'm going to share after that is sort of my hands down favorite way for minimizing the allostatic load that you carry. In other words, the stress you carry in your body, the inflammation that results in, and the downstream effects that ends up having for people. And finally, at the very end, I'm going to make a special offer to you guys because you showed up tonight, and I'm offering my 6-week course of how to do an elimination diet. Again, I do this about once a year, and it's a very special course to me. It's one of the most important intervention I know of to help people heal or begin healing from any complex chronic illness. And so I'm going to invite you to join me in that course. Now, you will get tons of information out of this talk, whether you join me in the course or not. The course is not for everyone, but I want you to consider as we're walking through tonight, whether this is something that you would like to try and whether we can help you. And to that end, to ask whatever questions you need to have answered to make a decision that's right for you.
You can't really see her.
So here we go.
He's up in the corner.
Maybe,
Bigger than
oh, I think I hear some people I love out there. Maybe Jerry, Mary, maybe you can mute everybody. Okay, so who am I? I am Kristen Ryman. I am a family medicine, board certified family medicine doctor. I'm also board certified in integrative medicine, but that is not a reason to listen to me talk about nutrition. Okay. Doctors do not learn nutrition in medical school, and we don't learn it in residency. And the maybe 5 total hours of nutrition education I got during the course of, 6 years at Stanford and 5 years in residency at Lehigh Valley, maybe 5% of what I learned, I still believe to be correct. So we are not the people to go to learn about nutrition. So if you came here to this talk because I'm an MD and you thought I had something to offer you about nutrition as a result, that's the wrong reason to listen to me. I do think there's some good reasons to listen to me, however, and I'm going to explain what those are. One of them is I'm a mom. So this is my cute family about 5 years ago. Those 4 kids mean everything to me, and it's really important for me that they understand how their body works and how to feed it optimally for best results. And so they've all done the elimination diet with me between 7 and 10 times, depending on, who we're looking at. And probably the vast majority of those times that we did it, it was because one of them came to me on the sly and said, "Hey, Mom, are we doing that elimination diet thing again this year?" And I said, I wasn't planning on it because I followed what my body said and I feel great. And they were like, "Well, we want to do it." So it's a tool that you can learn and use and pack and share and pull out whatever you need to feel better in your body or your brain. Another reason I do this work and have something to say about the topic of nutrition and health is that I'm the medical director for the Family Hope Center. This is an international organization dedicated to helping parents understand how to optimize their children's brains. So we teach parents from all over the world how to heal their kids of all manner of neurological ailments, including ADHD, dyslexia, autism. We help kids with Down syndrome and other genetic issues, cerebral palsy, basically any brain not functioning optimally. We have a whole program that we help parents to implement at home. And a foundation of that program is our nutrition protocols. And I play a large role in helping parents understand how to feed their kids for optimal brain results. Finally, another big important reason to listen to me is that I had one of these. Anyone know what this is? Take a good look. Looks like a big bullseye or a target lesion on skin. And in fact, it's called a bullseye rash. And I got one of these back in 2012. And again, in 2015 when I had my second and third case of Lyme disease. But between my second and third case, I learned how to eat to heal my gut and to balance my immune system. So the second time I got it, I like to think of it as my near-death experience. It was really awful. I lost 30 pounds. I lay in my bed for 5 weeks. I couldn't move. It took me about 2 years to recover from that fully. And during that 2 years, I learned many things that I hadn't learned in medical school about how to really optimize your immune system and recover your health from something complex and chronic. But one of the things that was most important to me is what I'm going to share with you tonight. And finally, I really imagine myself to be like this woman, you know, kind of like using my knowledge and using my information to kind of fend off things in the universe that are harmful to me. And when I say things in the universe, I'm talking about all that stuff, right? All the stuff that's around us all the time that we just take for granted as part of our modern everyday life, but that has downstream implications. And maybe if we were only doing one of the things or two of the things that aren't good for us, it wouldn't have such an impact. But when we're surrounded by all this stuff, it really takes kind of getting serious about fending it off. And so that's why I like to see myself as her. So I'm really curious to know how you see yourself. Why are you here? Why does this matter to you? We're not going to have time for everyone to share, but throw it in the chat and you might inspire someone else to both share and connect to their reason for being here and reason for learning this stuff. So to begin with, I want to talk about just the basics. I mean, food I consider to be a basic necessity, and whole real food is important, but there are some other basics. And I want to make sure that we don't just talk about nutrition in terms of food, because it's actually more than food. It's water, and clean, pure water is essential, and lots of it. It's sleep, adequate sleep, such that you're actually sleeping without having to get up with an alarm clock, which tells you your body got the sleep it needed. Movement is really important too, and connection to other people. We're going to talk about all of these things one at a time, very briefly, because I want you to understand the importance of all of these. So the basics, food. It's important to have a general concept of what to eat and what not to eat. I love Michael Pollan's little book called The Food Rules. It's a very thin little paperback book, and each page is a single rule. Single rules like, when you're in the grocery store, shop the periphery, meaning don't go down the aisles. That's where all the processed and packaged stuff is, but stay in the periphery where they have to cool the items and you know it's probably going to be whole and fresh. So an example of what to eat would be ample organic, locally grown vegetables, whole fresh foods as often as possible, healthy fats and oils. These are things like coconut oil and olive oil, oils from nuts or seeds that are cold pressed and organic. Organic grass-fed meats, free-range chicken and their eggs, sustainably harvested, and importantly, wild-caught, not farm-raised fish. Each of these types of animals, if you're choosing to eat animals, matters, because the animal that is raised in a confined cage or without access to its natural native diet doesn't have a microbiome or gut that is healthy anymore. That animal has downstream inflammation, which is what we're trying to avoid in us, right? So if we're choosing animals that are inflamed, we're taking in all that inflammation and it's not good for us. So this leads us to what's on the not eat list. Low fat or diet foods. These often contain lots of processing and lots of ingredients that aren't healthy for you, including sugar, dairy, and gluten. Sodas and energy drinks really have no place in a human body, or anything that your great grandmother wouldn't recognize as real food. If it's, Twinkies and Ho-Hos aren't anything that can grow on a tree or that can be harvested from the land or animals. And so that's not considered whole real food. That's a good kind of litmus test for you about what's real food. And finally, allergens. Some people are living their lives with slight allergies or intolerances to foods that they don't even recognize. We're going to talk a little bit later today in this talk about what are some ways you can recognize that you have a food intolerance. But the true best way to learn that, it's not a blood test, it's not a stool test, it's an elimination diet, where you take out all the foods that are likely to cause problems in most people for a period of time. You wait during that time while your gut heals, and then you add them back one at a time. And in that adding back, you really have an opportunity to learn for yourself once and for all what your body needs for optimal wellness. And the elimination diet is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. So stay tuned. So getting back to the basics, water is crucial. I like to use the highest quality water filter I can afford. For me, that's a Berkey. It's about $250. It's stainless steel, sits on the countertop and filters through charcoal. The daily goal of water is a half of your body weight in ounces of water. So that's body weight in pounds. Sorry for the Europeans on this talk, and others who use the metric system. But if you're taking your body, convert it to pounds, and then take half of that, convert that to ounces. So I weigh 160, half of that is 80 ounces of water is my bare minimum. And guess what? I can tell I'm behind today because my lips are dry. So I'm going to do, oh, look at this. What's this? What's this? Everybody drink. Okay. Avoid plastic water bottles and other forms of containers that are going to leach into the water and give you more chemicals. Glass and stainless steel are the best. I know people will say, well, what about my BPA-free plastic thing? And I'm like, well, it's BPA-free, but is it plastic-free? I mean, what else is it made of? Right? So BPA happens to be one thing that everyone's up in arms about, but there are a lot of other toxic things in the rest of that bottle. Please avoid caffeinated tea, coffee, and alcohol as much as you can. People often move to decaf and think there's no caffeine in there. There's actually 10% of the caffeine of regular coffee in a decaf cup. Another basic is sleep. This is crucial. We all pretend it's not. We use alarm clocks. If you're using an alarm clock to wake yourself up in the morning, by definition, you are not getting adequate sleep. Your body would wake up on its own without an alarm clock once it's done sleeping. And I know people say, well, that's just not convenient. I can never get to my job. I can never get to my obligation. Go to bed earlier, people. Like, it's that simple. This was one of the non-negotiables for me after Lyme. I found that if I got my 8 hours and 45 minutes of sleep, which turns out is what my body needs, I would feel like $1 million. And if I skimped on that even a little bit, and even to this day, if I skimp on it a little bit, I start to notice I become irritable. I start swearing at my kids, and I realize, oh, I need more sleep. I'm going to bed. And it really makes a huge difference. People who work nights, I recommend you sleep as much as you can during the day and really try to get a 90-minute chunk. An adult life cycle, or not life cycle, sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So if you can get that full 90 minutes, you're going to wake up refreshed, even if you are still sleep deprived and down on sleep. If you wake up after 50 minutes or 60 minutes, it's not going to feel as good. You're going to feel kind of that toxic fatigue that makes people feel just really groggy. And of course, if you have issues sleeping, please avoid caffeine. It has a 6-hour half-life. That means 6 hours after the last drop of coffee or decaf that you drank, or caffeinated tea, you have half the caffeine in your body. 6 hours after that, which is 12 hours from your last drink, you still have a quarter of the caffeine in your body. And people who are very sensitive to that often don't sleep, and they think, well, it was so far away from my last drink of coffee, it can't be connected. Trust me, it can. All right, movement is another basic lifestyle maneuver that can really change how you feel and how your body works. It moves your lymphatics. Lymphatics are these tiny little tubes that drain toxins and drain fluids and move your immune system around throughout your body. They don't have a pump. The pump is the muscles that squeeze on them when you move your body. So this is why they recommend that you go for walks to move your lymph and to detox, or to stretch yourself, or even isometrics where you're kind of flexing and relaxing. That's going to squeeze the lymph, bring that back to your heart, and let it circulate through your body. Try to make sure you're moving for at least 20 minutes every day. And it can be any kind of movement. It doesn't have to be running, or it doesn't have to be, weightlifting. It can be anything. The more you mix it up, the better for your brain. And movement has a wonderful impact on brain function because your body releases something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is a fancy way of saying a little chemical that makes your brain want to grow and heal. That's pretty cool. And then, of course, stress management. All downstream roads lead to inflammation. So that includes if you have an injury, that includes if you are ingesting a toxin in your diet or breathing something in that's not healthy for you. It also includes if you're stressed, your body makes cortisol and all sorts of other molecules get released and go into what I would call your proverbial bucket, which we'll get into in a moment. And that all lead downstream to inflammation. And only 10 minutes a day of an activity that reduces stress for you can make a difference in your cortisol levels and your immune function. So here's some examples of things that I've used and others in my life have used to good effect for managing stress. The goal is not to get rid of stress. Life is a stressful event. The goal is to figure out our relationship to stress in a way that allows us to move through it without becoming driven by it and overwhelmed by it. If you have a favorite stress relieving activity that you don't see here, go ahead and share it in the chat. You might inspire someone else to try something new. So I put supplements on here too. I am a person who really tries to get as much of my sort of quote supplementation through my whole real food diet. However, there are some things that have importance in humans because we can't make certain omegas ourselves. We can't get certain minerals from the earth anymore and from the plants and animals we eat just because of how farming practices have changed our land over the last 200 years. So I think a good source of omegas is important. That can be a fish oil, as long as it's from good, clean, healthy, wild-caught fishes. I use balance oil, which is a vegan form. It's a nut and seed form of omegas. Multi-minerals are good. Vitamin D3 is important with a K vitamin added if your gut's not healthy and happy. Of course, the course I teach and the information I'm going to share tonight can heal your gut so that you have healthy microbiome there and you don't need to add vitamin K, especially if you're adding a lot of leafy greens. And probiotics are really important. You know, our bodies are made up of between 50 and 90% of the cells in our body are not human cells. They're, you know, bacteria and viruses and parasites and mostly bacteria and some yeast. And those things are mostly our friends. You know, they're making vitamin K for us, for example. They're making short chain fats for our colon to digest, like butyrate. They're helping to digest our food and break down things that we can't break down. They're also very, very important in educating our immune system in terms of what's a proper thing and a healthy thing for our body to experience as a part of our microbiome or our resident bacterial load, and what things are not healthy and not serving us. And so without a healthy microbiome, we can't be healthy. And that's part of why we heal the gut with this elimination diet. Probiotics are one way to help support the development of a healthy microbiome. If you can get it all through fermented food, that's even better. I like sauerkraut. I have sauerkraut daily, or kimchi is my new current favorite, but it can be any fermented food, provided it's made from good quality whole real foods. And then there's some extras here I added during the last few years. People have been very interested in their immune function and how to prevent certain viruses from overtaking them. These are some really nice additions that I like to let people know about, just because they can support antiviral activity. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this concept of the bucket. And thanks to Jerry for putting together the bucket slides. I got so happy when I saw them. I was like, oh, they're so much better than my hand-drawn ones from last year. So thanks, Jerry. So when I talk about the bucket, I mean this concept of how much we can carry in our bodies in terms of toxic load, allostatic load, stress, all the negative stuff that we had in the picture before of the Wonder Woman slide, all the Doritos and Cheetos and cell phone EMFs and all of it, how much of that we can hold before we feel sick. Like everyone has a breaking point, right? And your personal breaking point can come and look like many different symptoms. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But I want you to start thinking about any time you feel lousy as an overflow of your bucket. Either too much stuff went in, your bucket didn't drain quickly enough from below, or there was a mismatch there. So think about what goes into your bucket as all the influences we talked about before, and think about the drain that comes out of your bucket as things like your pee, your poop, your sweat, your breath, your skin, your hair, the way stuff comes out of you, okay? Mostly poop and some pee, and then a little bit of everything else. So here's what happens when either there's too much going in for it to drain quickly enough, or your drain gets clogged. Like let's say you're constipated for 10 days and you can't, your body stops sweating. You're not able to get this stuff out. Well, that causes an overflow of your bucket, right? And I've listed some of the top most common things that I see when people have an overflowing bucket. So just take a look at this list and just consider whether there's anything on here that you have ever experienced. I see some nodding. Yeah, super common, right? Like who here hasn't experienced at least one of these at one time? Well, that was an example of your bucket overflowing, okay? And in my experience, the best way to manage an overflowing bucket is to take the bucket on and the drain in particular and heal the gut so that it does its job. 80% of the toxic load of your body every day should be processed and eliminated via your intestines, meaning it should end up in the toilet. If that's not happening, either because you're constipated and there's a blockage, or because you have very slow transit time, and what you're pooping today actually was put in your mouth 4 days ago, right? You might be having a bowel movement every day, but it's just very slow transit. Or because you just have an inflammation in the lining of the gut so that you're not able to move things down for elimination. Any of those things can cause problems in the gut that are fixed by elimination diet. So here are the things, before we move on to talk about the gut, that I would like you to consider leaving out of your bucket as much as you can. EMFs, those are electromagnetic frequencies. Those are things like sleeping with your cell phone or putting your cell phone to your face. That gives you electromagnetic frequencies that are not biologically friendly to you. They create allostatic load. They go in your bucket. Regular cleaning products and personal care products. These are so ubiquitous, right? Most people just have the normal thing because it's easy, but it's not that difficult to make a change to something healthier and cleaner. I like to encourage people to think of, don't put anything in your environment or on your skin in terms of a makeup or personal cleaning product that you wouldn't feel comfortable putting in a newborn baby's mouth. Okay? That's how much it matters, because your body's going to absorb it. Your skin absorbs that stuff. I remember the first time I did an elimination diet, and I realized when I got back on gluten that gluten wasn't good for me. I had gassy, bloaty, farty, I had brain fog. So I just went off it. And about 6 months into being off gluten, I got a Christmas present, and the Christmas present from my husband was a really fancy shampoo that I used to just love. It was like my splurge shampoo in residency. Like once a year, I'd like make the entitlement purchase while I was on call and be like, I'm buying that shampoo. I deserve it. Well, this shampoo I hadn't tried in a while, and it turns out the shampoo had wheat in it. And so I shampooed on Christmas with this really fancy, delicious smelling stuff. And about 2 hours later, I was like a zombie. I was at my in-laws' house and I was like eating, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, who gave me gluten? And I went down. I had to go upstairs and lie down for 2 hours, and it was this toxic sleep. I was drugged basically. And that was from just absorbing it in my skin. So it makes a difference. Mold is another thing that's really, really common. About 1/4 of our houses are estimated to be kind of infested with mold, and molds give off both toxins called VOCs, volatile organic compounds. They also produce little bioweapons that they use to kind of kill each other and establish territory, and spores, right? So mold spores and mycotoxins and VOCs are all really toxic to humans, certain ones more than others. And it's just a good idea to make sure your house doesn't have mold in your job and your car. Those are really common places for people to get mold hits. And again, they go in our bucket, they fill up the bucket, and they become part of our allostatic load. Teflon, plastics, aluminum, these are all things that are so commonly used around food, and they all leach into the food, and they provide us with heavy metals and plastics and other things that are not biologically helpful. I put mean people on here. I just feel like there's so much that we put up with sometimes in terms of toxic people. And I want to encourage you to think about the fact that those stress molecules that you're generating because you're putting up with toxic people go into your bucket. If you walk away from a conversation angry, go do something about the anger. I'm not saying take it out on them, but like go figure out how to transform that, because that stuff goes in your bucket and it adds to your allostatic load, and it really matters. Yeast overgrowth is another thing that I think people often don't know they have. People talk about being hangry. Anyone hear that term before? I feel hangry. It means hungry and angry at the same time. My youngest sister used to get so hangry and her ears would turn red. We joked that it was like fire coming out of her ears when she was hungry, but it was really that she wanted carbs because her yeast were controlling her, and they secrete over 386 compounds and chemicals that make us feel really, really happy when we feed them, which is called comfort foods, right? And really angry and really irritable and sometimes depressed if we don't feed them. And that's their way of controlling our behavior so that we give them what they need. And so if that's you, if that's resonating with you, you really need to listen to the rest of this talk, because I'm going to teach you guys a way to do an elimination diet that's not necessarily the way everyone teaches it, but it's a way that really helps to mitigate a yeast overgrowth so that you can cure that while you're healing the gut as well. And finally, foods that act like allergens, and that's what the rest of this talk is about. So if you've considered leaving out any of these things or anything else toxic that we've talked about, throw it in the chat. We'll be your little accountability buddy for the next 30 minutes. All right. So let's do a brief tour of the gut, because I think it's important to understand this organ, this very important organ, before we talk about how to heal it and what can go wrong with it. I love this from Sherry Rogers. The road to health is paved with good intestines. It makes me giggle every time. So we're starting with the gut and we're focusing on it tonight because 90% of chronic disease is the result of inflammation. I love a quote from Mark Hyman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. He says, 90% of chronic disease in this country, and we're talking things like diabetes and heart disease and stroke and Alzheimer's and autism, 90% of chronic disease is the result of inflammation. Just let that land. He likes to say, we ate our way into this mess, we can eat our way out of this mess. And I believe that's true. I've seen it happen again and again. 60 to 70% of our immune system hangs out in the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, also called the GALT. So if 70% of our immune cells are hanging out in our gut, and our gut is busy being inflamed because of what we're putting in our mouth all day, guess what it's distracted doing all day? It's distracted hanging out and mounting a response against the foods coming in that our body doesn't like. It's not off fighting COVID. It's not off fighting Lyme or keeping your Lyme disease at bay. It's not dealing with parasites. It's trying to manage the inflammatory load that's coming in our food. So systemic inflammation always involves the gut, and healing the gut is something that we have control over. That's the coolest part. Like, we have control over what we put in our mouths. So again, it's the home of digestion. It's a giant tube that goes from your mouth and nose all the way down to the toilet, wiggling and jiggling and changing the way it looks and changing the work it does in each of these places. Very specialized, modified cells for each of the tasks it has to do. It's an amazing organ. It's also often called the second brain because the neurotransmitters, or the chemicals that your brain uses to talk to one another, to other cells, to have memory, to have cells function properly, most of them are actually made in the gut and transferred to the brain via the vagus nerve. So digestion starts in the mouth. This baby is showing us how. It starts with some saliva and thinking, fantasizing about the food that's coming, gets the saliva going. And the saliva has all sorts of enzymes that begin to break down carbohydrates. And then, of course, we chew and our tongue moves things to the back of our throat, down through this long tube called the esophagus, which goes right into the stomach. The stomach is this massively strong organ that grinds and pushes and mashes our food together. It also secretes a ton of acid. The pH of the stomach is ridiculously low. It's supposed to be like 1.5, 2.5. People take acid blockers, because of either ulcers in their stomach or in their esophagus. Those things were never meant to be taken for years and years, people. They stop acid production in your stomach, but you need acid production in your stomach to digest food properly. So that's the beginning for many people of a leaky gut, is a long history of, Prilosec and omeprazole and those sorts of things. The next piece of the intestine of the gut we'll talk about is the small intestine. It comes right off of the stomach, and importantly, the pancreas dumps right into this juncture where it comes off, dumps in a bunch of enzymes that start breaking down foods even more than the stomach did. So it's got lipases to break down fat and proteases to break down protein, and anything, and what's the last one? Amylase, right? Pancreatic amylase, I think, is the third one to break down carbs. And all the different macronutrients start getting ground up and digested by these enzymes in the small intestine. The small intestine also has this really beautiful border called a brush border with these things called these projections that are these little waves you see. These are projections of the lining of the small intestine. They're very specialized with these tiny hair-like things, these microvilli on their surface of cells, in order to create a ton of surface area. And that surface area is responsible for filtering in and breaking down to the last possible molecule, the foods that we've digested inside the tract. Finally, everything moves into the colon. This is where the vast majority of your microbiome lives. All those cells, 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria and some yeast and some parasites, most of which are friendly to you, and importantly, have as much variety as you can foster, which comes from eating a variety of whole, real foods, mostly plants. There's also, here's the microbiome. There are some pictures of those cells stained. So I want to go back to the small intestine for 1 second and talk about what leaky gut happens, because this is the primary part of the gut that we care about when we talk about leaky gut. Some people hear leaky gut and they think, oh, that means I'm leaking into the toilet. No, you might be. You might have 0 symptoms of gut disorder. You might have no constipation, no diarrhea, no belly aching, no gassy, bloaty, farty. You might just have eczema or hives or psoriasis. You might just have Alzheimer's or autism. You might just have some far, far, far downstream symptom of inflammation and no gut symptoms whatsoever. So leaky gut actually means that the cells in the small intestine are not held together with these things called tight junctions anymore. They've been separated. So these projections on top where all the food's supposed to get filtered no longer matter, because food can slide right between the cells if the gut is leaky. And I'm going to tell you how that happens in a minute. So here's another picture of that. It might be easier to look at. Not only does food get in from the lumen or the tube inside the intestines, if in the case of a leaky gut, but microorganisms. So this is where yeast and E. coli and other things can translocate or get into your bloodstream where they're not supposed to be. And that, my friends, is what distracts your immune system. Your 70% of your immune system hanging out in the lining of your gut all day long. If they're having to fight those things off all day long, they're not going to be very helpful when it comes to things like COVID or things like your chronic Lyme or things like the influenza virus, because they're going to be busy. And remember, these are the symptoms of leaky gut. All of these things I have seen get better or sometimes go entirely away when the gut is healed with an elimination diet. Anyone surprised by this? I see some of you going, nah, I've heard you say it 1,000 times. All right, so my all-time favorite remedy for healing a leaky gut. It's time to talk about the comprehensive elimination diet. I learned this from the Institute for Functional Medicine. This is a bunch of really smart doctors who have done a lot of teaching over the last 20 years to regular doctors who want to learn about, root cause medicine. In other words, what's underneath the issue, that I don't just want to band-aid with the medication, but I want to solve the problem. They're sort of my heroes in that realm. And they have a beautiful elimination diet that I learned experientially for the first time, probably 11 years ago, and have been using ever since to great effect. And you can learn more about that at the Institute for Functional Medicine.org, I think. Jerry, maybe you can find it and throw it in the chat, if that's not the right one. So the comprehensive elimination, essentially, it's a 2-part intervention that you do on your own or in the context of a group like mine, but anyone can do it. It's 3 weeks during which time you eliminate all the possible allergens that can either cause a leaky gut, like gluten. Gluten can take your cells in your small intestine and rip them apart, just like a little crowbar in there, okay? Or other foods that can become like allergens if you already have a leaky gut. So most of the foods on the elimination diet list are not true allergens for anybody. They're like passive bystanders that, because your gut was leaky and inflamed because of stress, or because you had antibiotics, or because you're on birth control, or because you ever put anything in your mouth that wasn't whole real foods, right? Who has never done that, right? It's anyone can have a leaky gut, and everyone usually does unless they heal it. But you take this 3-week period to remove all those things that it can either create a leaky gut to start with or perpetuate a leaky gut once it's there. And that heals the gut. And people normally feel better by the end of that 21 days. Enough so that they're going to notice when they put something back in their diet during the second phase of the diet that makes them feel lousy. Okay? So people often wonder, well, how come I sometimes go off gluten and I don't feel any better? Or I do an elimination diet with just gluten out and then I add it back, but I don't feel any different. Well, the answer is you really have to sweep out all of the ingredients that are either causing a leaky gut or perpetuating a leaky gut for the gut to heal. And once the gut heals, it gives you better information because it's no longer inflamed. I liken it to if you've ever had poison ivy or a big rash, itchy rash from some reason, and you have inflamed skin that's itchy all over. If a mosquito comes and bites you on that big itch, you're not going to feel that because you're already doing this, right? It's not going to make a dent in your symptoms. But if you heal that inflammation, you give it time to go away, and now everything's back to normal, and the mosquito bites you, you'll feel it because it's not like a drop in the bucket of inflammation anymore. It's new in the context of your renewed, non-inflamed skin. So the second part of the elimination diet is where you add things back one by one in an effort to learn, in the context of your newly healed gut, what things feel good for me and what things don't. And the things that don't, we suggest you leave off your plate for optimal health. So that's the basics. I'm going to get down to some nitty-gritty now. So here are the foods that you eliminate during phase 1. And of course, if you have a true allergy or a known allergy to something like shellfish or to beans, you would leave that out too. Okay. And it's up to you whether you want to try adding it back once your gut is healed. But here are the main culprits that we take out for most people during the 3 weeks of elimination: gluten, dairy, peanuts, alcohol, GMOs of all kind, including all corn and soy, even organic corn and soy. You cannot be 100% sure that it's not genetically modified. And those things definitely do a number on a gut. Oranges, pork, caffeine, beef, eggs, and sugar. All chemicals and preservatives are out. And vegetable oils like canola, peanut oil, soy oil, margarine, earth balance, those are all out, okay, for the period of the diet. So I'm aware that many of you are currently freaking out at this page and wondering, what on earth would I eat for 3 weeks? Well, I have an answer for that. You can eat almost every vegetable known to man. Okay, the only vegetables that were on there were corn and soy. You can eat almost every fruit known to man. The only vegetables that were on there were oranges. Everything else, fair game. You can eat almost every meat. So there's no pork, there's no beef, there's no eggs, but there's chicken, there's turkey, there's quail, there's fish, there's shellfish, there's bison. Those are all foods you can eat. And if you say, well, I have a hard time getting those proteins, you can have every nut and seed known to man. The only one that I recommend you stay off of during the elimination phase is peanut, which technically isn't even a nut. It's a legume masquerading as a nut. So any nut and seed is fine, and those can be your sources of protein. You can have all healthy fats and oils as well. So that's well and good. Many people are wondering, well, I have no idea how to put that together, and I'm going to show you in 1 second how to do that. But first, I want to walk you through what a reintroduction phase looks like. Okay. So the reintroduction takes as long as you want it to take. It can be as short as 3 weeks if you're only adding, 10 things back. It can be as long as 5 weeks. It can be months if you're going to give yourself extra time to heal. But for most people, it's between 3 and 5 weeks for the second phase. During this time, you will add back one food at a time, and you wait up to 3 days. You don't have to go for 2 days or 3 days if on day 1 you feel yucky. Okay. If any of your symptoms return, if you have new symptoms, even if you have symptoms that you think, well, maybe that's just a cold. Everyone in my family is getting a cold. When in doubt, leave it out. You've done a lot of hard work in phase 1 to heal your gut. Don't keep eating a food that's questionable. You can always try adding it back later once you feel well again. And then the foods that felt fine after 3 days, those get to keep going on your plate. And you sequentially add back things as you want them. The first time I did this diet, I had to negotiate with my kids a little bit, and they were like, well, we have to have all the ingredients of a Snickers bar by Halloween. And I was like, fine, go get the label. We'll figure it out. So peanuts had to come back, and sugar and corn because of the corn syrup. It was, yeah. But, sometimes you have to negotiate to get to a yes for everybody. All right, so here's where I'm going to break down for you. This is like the crux of the way I do the elimination diet. This is not taught in or the other elimination diets. And the reason I teach it this way is because I have a handful of people when I do this diet, if I don't teach them this part, they fail to heal the gut. And it took me a couple of years to figure out what's going on. But the people who didn't heal the gut with the 3-week elimination to a last one were all eating way too many carbs. They were focusing on all the fruits they could eat and all the root vegetables they could eat and all the grains they could eat. And they were just continuing to feed their yeast population, because yeast love sugar of any kind. And if you have too much yeast, too many yeast in your gut, they're going to continue to keep your gut leaky and inflamed. And so this is the special sauce of my elimination diet program. And I'm going to share it with you guys so that if you decide to just take all this information tonight and run with it, you have everything you need to do it right. Okay, so imagine a plate of food. I imagine a plate of food. I cut the plate in half and then I cut one half in quarters. On one half of the plate, this represents a meal, okay? It can be as big a plate as you want, as small as a plate as you want. I tend to think of plates that you can stack. Like if one plate isn't enough, have a second plate, but make sure the proportions stay the same. So on one half of your plate, think about all the vegetables that grow above the ground that are okay on the elimination diet that you like to eat. I say that you like to eat because I'm a big believer that everything you put in your mouth should be delicious. Life's too short to eat, broccoli that you have to chew through if you hate broccoli. Okay, so pick the vegetables that you love and list them. Now would be a good time to do that, guys. If you are really keen to do this intervention, now would be a good time for your arts and craft project. On the other half of the plate, in 1/4, I encourage you to eat a serving of protein. That means one of your palms with no fingers and thumb of protein. About half the amount of vegetables you ate should be protein. Maybe this is a piece of salmon. Maybe this is a bunch of shrimp. Maybe this is a handful of nuts. Right? This is a protein source that is elimination diet friendly. And then in that final quadrant, you're going to imagine 1 or 2 or 3 tablespoons of healthy fats. These are the nut and seed oils I talked about before, like walnut oil, pecan oil, hazelnut, macadamia. This is olive oil, avocado oil, ideally organic and cold pressed. So you're not getting any of these at high heat. I don't recommend cooking in any of these oils because it damages the fragile nature of these oils. The only oils you should cook in are the healthy saturated fats like coconut oil, lard from a healthy animal, or ghee, which is clarified butter, ideally made from a healthy, humanely raised animal. And that, my friends, is the plate method. I also encourage people to think carefully about how many carbs they're adding on top of their plate. Think of carbs as dessert. Carbs are things like below ground vegetables, fruits, grains of any kind, obviously not the gluten grains, but things like rice and millet and quinoa. Those are all gluten-free grains that are fine on the diet. Oats, as long as they're gluten-free oats, and any sweeteners. The only sweeteners that are allowed on this diet are blackstrap molasses, agave, stevia, and brown rice syrup. And those are all considered carbs and used in very small amounts. So here's my plate. Let's see if I put anything on here I no longer eat. Yeah, no, I did this a few years ago. I did this for my ebook. But this is what my plate looks like. I try to mix it up. I think of it as like a choose your own adventure every day. I go to my fridge literally with this blueprint in my mind's eye, and I'm like, where are my 2 palms of above ground vegetables coming from? Where's my 1 palm of protein coming from? Which oil am I drizzling on? And that, my friends, is how you curb cravings. You help your yeast gently, you hospice your yeast into an early grave because you don't want them to overtake you. And if you are eating too many carbs, they will stay alive and ruin your elimination diet. So here are some examples. I think these are actually from past participants in the course. People in the course, we share a Facebook group and people love to post pictures of their meals and they get really creative. So you'll notice there's mostly vegetables here. In these cases, they're both raw, although they don't have to be raw. Here's some with cooked, here's a stir fry. And they all look delicious. There's a breakfast. So, because I know some of you are like, I forgot that list. Here's the list. It's time to screenshot it if you want to take a screenshot. But here are the things that we keep out for 3 weeks, plus or minus anything else that you know is on your, that doesn't work for my body list. All right. So at this point, I want to take a little bit of time to get you guys to air your concerns. I think you'll find that if you put your freak out or your concern in the chat, there'll be people there who might address that for you, people there who might have some tips for you. And I want to give you a chance to make use of that support. So while we're doing that, I'm going to talk about my course. My course happens once a year. And it's a beautiful way for people to come together and do this in a community with hand-holding and support. I have recipes that I've written. This year, we've added over 80 recipes from past members. So we've collated and collected all of the recipes that people shared in our Facebook group, and we've put them into our course platform. So you have access to all of them in an easy to find place. And in 6 weeks, people have remarkable results. So I want to give you a little bit more information about that in case you decide that you want to take this information and run with it, but you need a little bit of extra hand holding and support. So first, I'm going to just tell you right off the bat, this course is not for you if you're not convinced your gut needs healing. And the reason I say that is because it's hard. Like, it's not easy to do. And so if everything I've shared tonight has not been enough to convince you that if you haven't done an elimination diet, you have a leaky gut and it needs healing, then I would say don't waste your time, because you're probably not going to have the motivation to get it done, even though I would disagree that you don't need it. If you also plan to take the information you just heard and you know you can run with it and you know you'll actually do it, all power to you. Go do it. Like, get off this call now. Just go start. Go clean out your cupboards. If you don't have access to a computer, it might be very hard for you to do this course, because all the course materials on a computer is on a computer platform that we give you private access to, and you have access to that for 6 months from the time of purchase. Or if you just completed an elimination diet and you feel amazing and you've honored your body and you've followed what it told you it needed when you added things back and you haven't cheated on it, then chances are your gut's still healed and you do not need this course. However, this course is probably for you if you're ready to do a comprehensive elimination diet as a next step to your wellness. If you know that support and guidance and coaching always gives you the best chance for success, that's why we built this as a course. Like, that's what this whole course is for, is to help guide you and support you and encourage you and brainstorm with you about obstacles and really give you the best chances to rock it out. If you have access to a computer, obviously, and you want simple, delicious, done for you meals, that's what all the recipe adding was this year. It was a big effort on the part of my team. And I want to thank Jerry personally for doing that. It's going to make a huge difference this year, I think, with people's flexibility and the availability of good, delicious foods to try. And if you're afraid that cravings might get in your way, the plate method and carb rules is kind of my signature piece. It's the way I help people get through that yeasty beastie die-off that makes it so hard for us to choose foods that are not, highly processed, packaged, sugary, simple sugars. It's an important piece. And I wish more people were teaching about it, because I think a lot of people miss the opportunity to really heal their gut if they don't learn that and do it well and get the support to do it well. And if you plan to do a comprehensive elimination diet, maybe not right away, I'll tell you the course starts on April 1st. You get all your information as soon as you sign up, but we start having calls, and the Facebook group starts on April 1st. Our first call is April 3rd. Many people say, well, I can't do this now because I have a birthday party in the middle of April, or, a lot of people have Easter will be celebrated and we'll start eliminating after that, just so you know. But a lot of people are going to be like, well, I'm not ready to do it till summertime. That's fine. You have 6 months to use all the information, and you'll have the Facebook access even after the course ends in 6 weeks. So here's some more details. It's a 6-week program, takes place all online. So you get to do everything from the comfort of your own kitchen. It's a self-paced tour. So you get access to all these videos. Every week has a set of videos that walks you through some important elements of an elimination diet. You can watch them all at once. You can binge watch the whole thing tomorrow, or you could take it step by step and do it week by week, whatever pacing works for you. I recommend you watch that week's video and work through the material before you come to that week's call. The calls happen every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. One of them is going to happen on a Tuesday because my son's running the Boston Marathon with his girlfriend, and I want to go watch that on a Monday. So I think the second or third week will be on a Tuesday. And I'll tell you about some additional support calls as a bonus in a minute. But my courses calls all happen on a Monday. And I encourage you to do as much of the work for the week in advance of that, because it's not like a teaching call. I'm not like delivering a webinar like I am now on those calls. I'm really holding space for you guys to struggle and wrangle with the material and ask questions and get your needs met. So it's really more of a group process there, and a support call and a coaching call than it is teaching. It's also a method of eating that empowers you. And it provides you optimal nutrition, both macronutrients and micronutrients, to reduce cravings and give you adequate energy. And it's really a tool that you can walk away with and use again and again and again. I've done this probably 13 times in the last 11 years. 3 times during 2020 when, we had this new virus in the air, and I was like, well, I'm just going to be as healthy as possible, including when I went down to the front lines with my friend Christan in April of 2020. And I was like, we're doing an elimination diet, obviously, make sure our immune system is rock solid. And I want that for you too. I want you to have something in your back pocket that you always can pull out when you're not feeling optimally. You have a little brain fog, your energy's lower than usual. You can jumpstart everything with an elimination diet. You'll also get access to our private Facebook group. We have one group during the course, and then at the end of 6 weeks, we transfer everyone into our alumni group, which has over 150 people right now, and they're all they still share recipes, they still encourage each other. It's a really beautiful community. You get unlimited email access to me for the duration of the course. So if something's not answered in the Facebook group to your satisfaction, you're welcome to email our team and we'll get back to you within a couple of days. Really make sure you have the support you need to make choices that are going to serve you in this program. We have a weekly Zoom call. As I mentioned, this year we're going to have an additional Zoom call, which I'll tell you about in a second. And we have lifetime access to the Facebook group and 6-month access to all the videos. So bonuses in my standard course, you get a free copy of my Life After Lyme ebook. Chapter 4 is where I talk all about diet and the importance of healing a gut to a healthy immune response for Lyme and anything else that ails you, really. You get hours of extra videos. I can't seem to help myself, and I add lots of these every year. Little on-the-fly videos I make of myself cooking and showing you how to make this sauce or that sauce, or how to, eat out on the elimination diet, eat at a salad bar, and how to choose things that'll really build your plate properly and make sure you stay away from the allergens. There's some yoga videos on there from past participants. My community is really beautiful. I have to say, it's people just love to give and from their hearts. And so we often end up with a lot of new recipes, in addition to things like someone's leading us through a yoga thing, or someone's teaching us about essential oils and how to support the detox. It's really been beautiful. And so that's what you get with my course. This year, I'm so excited to announce that I'm partnering with my integrative holistic medicine friend, bestie, Christine Hines, who went to residency with me, and we're very close. We studied for our integrative medicine boards together a couple of years ago, and we've just been meeting regularly and scheming about this ever since. And so we're both really excited. She runs an elimination diet course too for her community. Hers is a plant-based elimination diet, and that's one of the things I've struggled to create for my people. We talk a lot about humanely raised meats, and we talk about how to safely eat meat. Christine's like the complete expert for how to do this diet as a vegetarian or a vegan. And so this year we're partnering, and we're each offering our course in partnership, so that for the price of each of our courses, which is $596, that's supposed to be $597, sorry, you get both courses. So it's 2 courses for the price of 1 this year, plus all the stuff that comes along with her course, which is really cool. If you don't know Dr. Christine Hines, she's also offering a webinar on the elimination diet this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So let Jerry know in the chat if you need a link to sign up for that, because that's not to be missed. Extra bonus number 2, you get a free consultation with me, 30-minute consultation. It's for the first 20 people who sign up only. And it's really geared at people who can't access me. I'm not taking any private patients right now, but I want people who really feel like they need a doctor's input during this diet to have access to me. So if that's you and you know it's you, sign up now and make sure you get one of those spots. You can use it to get a second opinion on a health concern. You can use it to go over your labs or studies. You can look through all your supplements and talk about them. You can pick my brain about whatever you want basically during that time, or we can just focus on your goals. And I can coach you through kind of how to get the most of this experience. So that's our second bonus. Bonus number 3, I'm really excited about. So I have an online community that is sort of my inner circle of wellness seekers, and it's a monthly membership. It costs $297 a month, but I'm giving whoever's taking this Healthy Meals, Happy Family course, I'm giving them 2 free months of that. So that's a value of $596. And it's a really sweet deal because it gives you 4 additional support calls over the course of 2 months. It gives you 8 weekly masterminds. It gives you 2 live expert talks, and it gives you 2 office hours, which is where I put on my doctor hat and people bring their labs and studies and their issues, and we talk about them, and I kind of break it down from a doctor's perspective, help them think about it, what's going on. Plus you get all the replays to the past speakers, which are over 75 speakers now, different holistic healing topics. So that's a really cool value. I'm excited to share that with you guys. It's been a transformational space for many, many people, and I wanted to share it with whoever's doing the Healthy Meals, Happy Families. It's not going to start until May 1st. I think it's going to run May through the end of June, in case you're wondering what months you're going to get. And so those are the bonuses. That's the course. It's $597. I think it's a huge value. It's almost $2,000 value if you add all that stuff up, and it's a sweet deal. And it's basically 2 courses for the price of 1. because you get my course, you get Kristan's course. Kristan's going to be running a whole other series. Her series is going to be weekly visits on Thursdays at 1. I'm going to be Mondays at 8. So if you're still on this call, chances are you're considering doing this intervention. If you're not, and you just lapsed and got sidetracked and you want to leave, bye. Thanks for coming. I'm really glad you came. I hope you take this information and run with it and change your life with it. If you're still here because you want a little extra support and want a little extra help, please, let's use this time to help you get clear on whether this is the right thing for you or not. So feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and say, hey, I have a question and I'm happy to address it. I also know there are a lot of people on this call who are past participants, Healing Grove members, people who did the course when it was called Healthy Meals, Happy Families, people who did it when it was called Boost during the pandemic. And I'm sure they would also be willing to jump in and share if they hear a question that speaks to them or a struggle that they had that they can speak to. So I know my community and I know that's what they do. So I'm just going to put it out there that they're welcome to do that. Before I do, maybe Jerry can throw in the chat the registration link and people can, can sign up if they want and ask questions. I'm ready to roll answering them. Hi, Mark. Your hand's up. You want to say something?
How are you?
Good.
Yeah, I had it in the chat. Yeah, I had a question. Have you ever heard of gastric emptying? Gastric emptying.
Gastric emptying, you mean like dumping syndrome? Or are you talking about just...
Well, it's a procedure. It's a scan to check for digestion issues.
Yeah, so a gastric emptying scan where they're looking to see...
I'm having it done in a couple of days, so...
So they're looking to see how rapidly your stomach contents moves into the small intestine.
Yeah, I have a bunch of sludge in my gallbladder.
Sludgy gallbladder. Okay. I mean, yeah, I've heard of it. It's pretty...
Yeah, you know, I'm a little concerned. Yeah, I mean, if it gets worse, you know, that could be bad. My dad had his gallbladder taken out in the late 60s when I was a few years old. And he actually passed out on the Delaware Bridge. So, anyway, I worry about that. And he had, you know, colon cancer. We have that history in our family and stuff. So I worry about that also. And he was 62 when he got colon cancer in 89, and I'll be 62 in 2 years. So I kind of worry because it's hereditary. It could be. It was from my grandfather down. So,
well, you know what?
So I worry about that.
You know what else is hereditary, Mark? Our diets and what we're intolerant of without knowing it. A lot of people inherit, I mean, everyone inherits their genes, right? But a lot of people also inherit without thinking about it, how their parents ate and how their families eat and the various intolerances. So for example, people will often say to me, well, I have migraines because my mother had migraines, my grandmother had migraines. I'm like, yeah, but were your mother and grandmother eating the same way you eat? Of course they were. Like those get passed down too. And what I see is people breaking that cycle of inheritance, you know, because they're changing their environment. Genes don't express unless the environment turns them on, right? Genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. Yeah.
You know, gallstones. Yeah, gallstones is a big thing. People have to, very common. So, because the problems I have, I don't have abdominal pain or blood or anything like that, but I have such discomfort. Like right now, it's just blown up, and I didn't even eat that much. You know.
So, are you taking this? Are you going to do an elimination diet?
Well, I have to see. I have to see what happens this week because this test is pretty serious.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, doctor right now isn't saying surgery, but God forbid it gets worse. I mean, I don't want my gallbladder out unless it's, you know, cancerous or it's an emergency basis.
Right.
You know, mass or something, because, you know, you just don't want to have it taken out if you don't have to, you know.
Yeah, agreed.
And,
well,
so
I
see
wish
what happens. I
wish you the best. I wish you the best with that. Yeah, and let us know if you want to join the course, because I think it could be something that could be very helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question. What else do we have out there? Joyce, you unmuted yourself. Oh, no, you didn't. Just looks that way. Sorry, poor Joyce, I just called her out. Who else has a question? I thought I saw a hand up. Come on, people. Don't be shy.
Kristen, there was a question from Betsy. How does one get off H2 blockers?
Yeah, so H2 blockers, those are one of the things that prevent acid in your stomach, and they can be very hard to get off of. And what I often do with that is I use a couple of different things. I found that actually putting acid into the stomach can be very helpful, because one of the things that happens and can lead to slow gastric or poor gastric emptying, like Mark was talking about, is absence of acid in the stomach. If you can't break down the food in there, the body doesn't get the signal to release it to the small intestine. And so putting in acid, like in the form of betaine hydrochloride, can be very helpful to add to the acid content of the stomach. Zypan is also a good product, that does that. And so depending on the person and what we're dealing with and working with, we'll often do like either a slow removal of the H2 blocker. Sometimes people will do it cold turkey. I find that it takes some people time to recover. They have to rebuild the mechanisms in their stomach to make acid on their own, but eventually they can get off everything in many cases. Great question. H2 blockers they became really popular when I was in medical school back in the 90s. And, then they went over the counter with a little purple pill, right? Prilosec is sold at Costco now in the aisle. And everybody just thought, oh, what a great thing. It's like the magic bullet for my indigestion or my bloating or my heartburn. And a lot of people got hooked on them because they were so easy. And the problem with this is if you don't have acid in your stomach, not only are you not breaking down your proteins properly, which can lead to more leaky gut down the line and can lead to feeding the microorganisms in your small intestine and where they shouldn't be and in your gut, but it can lead to parasites because you're ingesting things that are supposed to be deactivated in your stomach, but your stomach doesn't have the power anymore to deactivate them because you've taken the acid away. So I see a lot of people with excessive parasites as a result of being on H2 blockers forever. Good question. What other questions are out there? Any other questions? Go ahead,
Sorry,
Jerry.
there was another question. Yeah, that said, does all that good oil contribute to raising cholesterol?
Yeah, no. The cholesterol story is really upside down in this country, and we've all been kind of brainwashed. First of all, your body needs cholesterol, and I'm not saying you should walk around with a cholesterol of 400. That's not the answer, but people get really up in arms about a cholesterol of 207 or 230, when in fact, if you don't have enough cholesterol, you cannot make so many important structures. You can't build cell membranes that are sturdy and have integrity. You can't make any of your sex hormones or your water-saving hormones. You can't make cortisol. You can't make testosterone or estrogen. And so because cholesterol is the backbone of all that. And so people often worry about high cholesterol foods when in fact, most of the cholesterol in our bodies is made in our livers so that we can have the cholesterol necessary to have all these other downstream effects. So cholesterol is not the problem. Oxidized cholesterol is the problem. How does cholesterol get oxidized? Inflammation. It really all comes back to inflammation. And a leaky gut is the ground zero for inflammation in the body. So if you want to lower your cholesterol, first of all, pay attention to whether it's oxidized or not, because if it's not oxidized, I don't want you lowering your cholesterol. But if you have oxidized cholesterol or a heart history that's a result of that oxidized cholesterol, it's important to unoxidize it. And you do that by lowering inflammation, and you do that by healing your gut. All roads lead to heal the gut. What else do we have out there?
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
So how do you unoxidize?
Oh, Jan, you muted yourself. Hold on a sec.
How do you know if you have oxidized cholesterol?
You do a test. You do a
Okay.
test. It's the only place I've found it reliably available is Vibrant America. That's where I get it done. They have a whole cardiac panel that looks at things like ApoB and oxidized cholesterol and plaque and MPO, in addition to the standard lipid panel, which is pretty much meaningless without these other markers. And that's how I determine if someone's at risk. I also look at their clotting history and their clotting genetics, because there are a lot of different pathways that can lead to clotting that can create worse risk for people who have even a little bit of oxidized cholesterol, or at worse risk of having something bad happen with that if they have a lot of clots in their body.
So would my traditional cardiologist call out for this test for me? Or how would I get a test of this?
Why don't you bring it to office hours and we'll talk about it
Okay.
in the Healing Grove, because that's the kind of thing that your cardiologist probably doesn't know about. It's a bit cutting edge, although, you know, there's an interesting phenomenon happening. There's a handful of sort of thought leader, influencer doctors out there who are talking about this kind of thing on their podcast. Peter Attia is one of them. So that might be something you could like look into or ask me about in office hours, and I could send you some of his podcast links, and he might be eager to listen to a Stanford trained physician who is wicked smart and knows all about this stuff and has interviewed all the leaders in the research field around, you know, cardiac risk and atherosclerosis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, fingers crossed your doctor is a humble learner and has some time on his or her hands.
Okay.
Great question, though. What else do you have out there, Jerry? Oh, Sheila's hand went up.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't like stevia, and there's the other one. I don't know. If I use any sweetener and I don't eat any sugar, I'll use a little bit of maple syrup. Is that permissible or no?
Well, it depends on your goals, Sheila. So if you're doing the comprehensive elimination diet that I teach, no, you wouldn't use maple syrup for the 3 weeks of elimination. And so I would direct you back to our mantra, which is that anyone can do anything for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And, you know, all those fruits you have access to, including dates, you'd be able to use a little bit of that for sweetener if you wanted to. I usually allow date sugar, coconut sugar.
I could use date. Okay. That
Yeah.
I like. I just don't like the stevia. It's too sweet. Okay.
Yeah, stevia has like a narrow window of effect, right? A little bit, not enough, and you can't taste it too much, and it tastes like, you know, terrible chemicals. But there's a nice window if you can find it. I found.
And I don't use much sugar, but the dates will work. Thank you.
Yeah, Sheila, are you doing this diet with us? I keep hearing that you are, but I haven't seen you in there yet.
I just registered.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I got to get rid of the dairy.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the cheese.
Well, there's one way to find out.
There's symptoms there. I know it, and so if I do it with the group, it'll be a good thing.
Yeah, it's
I'm all
always better to agree.
excited to be with
And
you.
here's one thing. Here's what I will say. A lot of people who have trouble with dairy now do an elimination diet, and then when they add it back, they don't have trouble anymore because it was perpetuating the leakiness. It wasn't causing it for them. So that's an important piece I want you to hear. You might think you have an issue with this or that right now, and you may not actually have that issue. And once you heal the gut, you may be perfectly fine on that thing. And the only way to find out is to do the diet.
Right. Okay. I'll be
Cool.
good and do it. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so excited you're joining us. It's going to be super fun. All right.
About monk fruit? Some
Monk
people.
fruit. You know, monk fruit kind of became popular after the functional medicine guys created their diet. And so I don't think it was even on their radar. So what I usually say is when in doubt, leave it out. I don't know the answer to monk fruit or no monk fruit. It's probably fine, but like, do you really want to compromise your diet or risk compromising your diet for 3 weeks? You can do anything for 3 weeks, right? Pick a different sweetener that's approved. All right, who else has a question? Mary, you unmuted.
I did, because I keep seeing Joyce's hand come up and then go down and up and down. So, but before you go to Joyce, I just want to say, I would encourage everybody who's on the fence to just jump in and do this. It's going to be my third, maybe my fourth.
I feel like it's your fourth, Mary.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But that means I'm a very slow learner, I guess. But every time I do it, I learn something new. And I always feel like a rock star when I'm finished with it. So I'm hoping fourth time. I mean, I'll probably do this forever, because I'm human and I will go off this healthy path from time to time, but I'm learning every time I do it, the fastest way to get back on it. So I'm in it, and I love to see all of you in it too.
Thanks, Mary. You're in it to win it.
Yeah.
And if 4 times means you're a slow learner, then what does that say about me? I'll be on my 14th round. So just putting that out there. And the other thing I will say is that I didn't mention this, but people who have done this diet, like once you've purchased this course, I never charge you full price again. You always get a huge discount. I think this year you guys are getting like 80% off or something. So, and that's even with all the bonuses and the 2 courses for the price of 1. So I always make it really reasonable for you to jump back in, because I want people to get the support if they need it again, even though you have all the information. So I'm excited you'll be joining us again. All right, Carol says I'm a slow learner too. Listen, you guys, this is what I learned at Stanford Medical School. Medicine is a multi-pass system. It's not like you learn it once on the first time around. You have to kind of keep spiraling it. Hopefully you're not spiraling the drain. You're spiraling in an upward rotation, right? And heading towards even more greatness and knowledge. But that's how life is, right? You get the same lessons again and again. And each time you're a different person. And each time you bring something new and some new bit of wisdom emerges. So I think we should honor the multi-pass system of this. All right, Joyce, are you ready? Awesome.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for doing this and inviting everyone. And then my question, it might be too much, but can you talk about the link between the leaky gut and GERD? That's my first part. And then if there are phases to the elimination diet, and you talked about the elimination part, but then when you're bringing things back, in order to really heal the gut, you need to, you had probiotics on there, but there are steps with taking, enzymes for absorption, and then probiotics for seeding the gut. But if you only have time for one, it would be, could you talk about the link between GERD and leaky gut?
No, I'm going to answer both of those because they're both super important, and I appreciate those questions. So the answer to the leaky gut and GERD is I don't know what the mechanism of action is that might cause a leaky gut to create GERD, other than when you have a leaky gut, you have systemic inflammation. I mean, these little gaps that happen between cells mean that things pass into your bloodstream undigested that aren't supposed to be there, and your immune system treats them like foreign invaders. So a little bit of undigested bread or orange comes floating into your bloodstream, and your immune system freaks the bleep out and tries to kill it and creates a cytokine storm and all sorts of inflammation around that molecule. And then it goes on to the second phase of the immune response, which is the humoral response, which is where the cells in your spleen, like the T cells and the B cells in particular, make antibodies against that chunk of orange. Okay. And then that gets directed both at the orange in your system, which can create fire and inflammation anywhere, including around your stomach and in your esophagus, which can lead to GERD, but also at the lining of your gut, which perpetuates the leaky gut. I haven't even talked about molecular mimicry, which is where a chunk of orange that you should never have seen by your immune system generates an antibody that matches not only to that chunk of orange, but coincidentally matches to a chunk of your thyroid. So much of autoimmunity comes from a misdirection of the immune system against parts of your body that look a lot like this infection or this chronic inflammation or food that you shouldn't have gotten into your bloodstream in the beginning. So that's one possible mechanism. I will say this though, GERD represents to me, I can't think of a more immediate reaction to your body saying that food doesn't agree with me than GERD. It's right up here. It's like it can't even get down there because your body's like, nope, nope, nope. And so GERD can happen for a variety of reasons, but it always signals to me that there is something in your diet that does not agree with your body. Answer: elimination diet. So the second half of your question, I've already forgotten. Tell me what the second half was again.
So in order to fully heal the gut, you did the elimination part, which is step 1, but then, we need to do the enzymes so that we can digest properly the foods and, the proteins and fats and carbs that we are taking in, and then the probiotics.
So my answer to that is question mark. I don't think everybody needs enzymes and probiotics in supplemental form to relearn how to digest their food. Some people might need it as a bridge, you know, while they're building up variety in their gut. Some people who have, you know, there's another form of leaky gut, or another manifestation called SIBO, which is an inflammation in the small intestine because bacteria from the large intestine that aren't supposed to be in the small intestine are supposed to mostly be in the large intestine, where they kind of come out as poop periodically, but they translocate. And that can happen because of the poor gastric emptying that Mark was talking about. You just aren't moving things forward. And so those bugs aren't getting pushed downward. They just kind of filter up. And that creates a whole other host of symptoms. A lot of gas and bloating and pain, reflux can all be symptoms of SIBO, for example. And those people often do need extra support. They might need some antimicrobial herbs or even antibiotics to help kill off some of those bugs. I mean, that we get into some of those things in the course for people who aren't finding the results they're looking for. So that's another reason that I do this as a community group learning, so that people have not only the community and the information and resources, but so that we can tweak things as we go. So if someone gets to day 3 or 4, where typically there's a detox reaction, if you've gotten out everything in the diet that's causing it to be leaky and inflamed, usually around day 3 or 4, your gut will begin healing enough that you start to do detox work. And that's what the gut's meant for, but it's not used to doing that. So as it starts to pull down toxins to eliminate them, because now it's finally working again and doing its job, you might feel lousy on day 3 or 4. If you don't feel lousy on day 3 or 4, I have to wonder with you, are you healing your gut? Now, there's another way to tell that, and that's because that's looking at you kind of and looking at your symptoms and seeing that you're getting better and better and better. If you're getting better and better and better, I don't care if you had a detox reaction on day 3. I know your gut's healing because you're getting better. Your eczema is clearing up, your acne is going away, your brain fog is going away, your energy is coming back, the psoriasis is clearing up. Those are all really good clues that you're healing the gut. And you may not have a detox reaction that was obvious, and I don't care at that point. But if you have no detox reaction and you're not doing this, then we have to wonder together, is there some additional allergen we have to take out? And that's where we kind of really get into things on our group visits, on our weekly calls. So I want to know, is everyone here on board? Is everyone here making progress? Are we all kind of tucked in, or do we need to kind of tweak different individuals based on their symptoms, their history, and what's going on with them? And sometimes we go to like comprehensive elimination diet 2.0, which is where we take out maybe nightshades for this person, maybe legumes for that person, depending on the person, to really try to get them here. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for that question. It's a great one. A lot of people, you know, I think in our society, a lot of us want that purple pill. We want the probiotic. We want to have the little armamentarium of supplements that we think will take care of the work for us. And they can be supplemental, but they shouldn't be the main course. And so I value them where I need them, but I try to encourage people to think about foods doing the work first. Other questions? Lori had something in the chat I'm going to read out loud. She says, just want to add to anyone new here who's considering, the amount of practical info in this course is amazing, not even counting the actual support from Kristen on her calls and from her amazing team. Thank you, Lori. I highly encourage anyone here to do this. She makes something complicated simple and somewhat difficult easier, almost easy. Best wishes to everyone. Thank you, Lori. Awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Jan says, I need to confess, this scares me because food is one of my few pleasures. I will need help. Well, Jan, you're in the Healing Grove, which means you actually get this course for free, right? I didn't mention that's another benefit of the Healing Grove. You get pretty much everything else I do for free. And so I'm assuming you're doing it with us. Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, I mean, let's do this, baby. Like, it's going to be okay. We're going to support you through it. And it's no joke. Like most of us are afraid of giving up our favorite food. And it's because we've lived through trying it, and we know that our yeast and our microbiome don't go down lightly when we deny them the foods they've become accustomed to. Okay. And so this is one of the pieces I think a lot of people miss when they're changing their diet and they're wrestling with cravings. The microbiome has its say. And it's like if it's bigger than its britches, it's chattering in your ear all day long going, what do you mean you're not going to finish that last potato? What do you mean you're not going to go for the last cookie? What do you mean you're not going to get me my sugar treat? Because that's what they need to survive. And I will tell you that eating this way, especially the way I teach it in the course with the plate method and carb rules, causes that voice, that little yeasty chatter to get quieter and quieter and quieter until suddenly you're like, I can eat whatever I choose. I don't have to like fight this like urge to just, I was there, like I was a college athlete. I swam at Yale. I ate carbs like it was nobody's business. And I carried that into my post swimmerhood. Once I became a swammer, I was still eating carbs all the time because it's what my yeast had become accustomed to. And what I craved. I couldn't finish a meal that didn't have enough bread or pasta or potato or some kind of sweet cookie at the end because my yeast were like, we're starving. I'd eaten food, all right? I'd fed the human, but the yeast were not satisfied. And so I know what it's like to have that driving like in your brain. And I'm telling you, it's gone. It's like not there. Like it's like I had a Siamese twin and it was surgically removed. And that's kind of gross. I've never said that before, Carol. I saw you kind of laugh at me. Yeah, I think it works though, right? It kind of works. Like there's not that chattering anymore. And, but believe me, I was there. Like I like to say I used to have a borderline inappropriate relationship with my bread machine. Like it was on my counter running all the time, either making food or sitting in the sink getting washed or getting ready to make more bread. And I made, of course, the healthiest bread ever. It was like oats and honey and whatever. Yeah. Carbs, gluten, no longer a big part of my life. And it feels really different. I'm here to tell you there's life on the other side of that. And the human's a lot happier. Yeah. And if you're scared, that's okay. Like just notice that you're scared and tell yourself this, my yeast are really scared. Like they don't want you to hear this information, Jan. In fact, the fact that you're still here tells me you can do this because you're stronger than your yeast. Some people checked out. They like ran screaming from the building because their yeast were like, don't listen to her. She said, never listen to a doctor talk about nutrition. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You won't survive without that sugar and that. They're gone. Their yeast took them down the road. You're still here, which tells me you can do this.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
I needed the pep talk. Thank
Awesome. Everyone, that's what you get in support calls. Just say it. Sheila.
I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
I was introduced to something that I've just started a week or so ago. Essential oils, which I've used, but with this company that I'm buying from, wow. For the parrot, it's a blend and it's in a roller bottle. And it's for the parasympathetic nervous system. You put it behind your ear before each of my meals, 3 meals a day. It really helps with digestion. I don't know if anybody uses essential oils, but
I'm sure some people here do. Why don't you put in the chat your link to that? And some people might be interested to know what it is.
You may be familiar with it. It's Vibrant Oils out in California.
I don't know them.
No. Someone told me about it and they had a special going. So for this particular parasympathetic oil, and so I bought it. And I am like overwhelmed with it because it takes away hunger. You feel full after you're eating, and they recommend putting it on before you eat, and it's very calming. just changes your attitude toward with eating. So I'm hoping that will assist with the getting rid of the dairy.
Well, I'm sure there are people on here whose yeast don't want them to
I'll
hear
put it
about
in,
this.
I'll put it in the chat, okay?
Yeah, which is a good reason to share in the chat. I'm all about like putting yeast in their place. Like some of them can live here. Like I'm okay. I'm not looking for like a zero tolerance for yeast, but like I'm looking for a zero tolerance of being driven by them. Like I don't want to live my life based on their value system. I want to live my life based on my value system and what I know is optimal for my own body and my brain. Period. So there's no place for yeast, you know, making me their automaton. And I feel the same way about you guys. I want you guys to be stewards of your body and not stewards of yeast and their needs. Other questions? I saw another something in the chat that I can't find. Jerry, what am I missing here? I feel like people might have asked things that I missed. Do you see anything?
From what I can tell, you have everything.
Was there a question about tofu? Oh, Mary Ross, thank you. Gratitude for advocacy for our health. You're welcome. You're so welcome. Thank you for saying that. This is what I care about. I heard a tofu question.
Somebody did ask what, there is one that said, what's the problem with eggs and soy?
Good. Okay. I love this question because there's no problem with anything. Okay. The question is, are they serving you in your goal? If your goal is to heal your gut, you have to take them out because both of them tend to be the things that people have seen a lot of while they've had a leaky gut. And anything you see a lot of while your gut is leaky and inflamed can become a secondary allergen for you until you heal the gut. Okay. So people are always like, well, what's so bad about oranges? What's so bad about grass-fed beef? Well, nothing's bad about them unless they're perpetuating your leaky gut because you saw them, your gut saw them once when it was leaky and inflamed, and that became a setup for a disaster in that cycle. So you want to break the cycle. And that's why you take out the top 10 allergens. Often people will come to me and say, well, I had this blood work done and it shows I have IgA and IgG to these different foods. There's cashews and here's, you know, artichoke and here's eggplants. And I'm like, well, then take them out too. Like these are just the top 10 common allergens. You might have other things that you know disagree with you, and you may not know that other things disagree with you. And we only learn that because in the context of the course, you're not getting better. You're not having a detox day and you're not getting better. So then we say, okay, what else can we take out? What else might be a culprit? Let me hear your whole meal yesterday. What are you eating a lot of? What have you historically eaten a lot of? Those things could have become allergens in the context of your leaky gut. And then we remove those. Okay. It's a process of whittling it down until your gut heals. And then we add things back. And most people can get back on most things. Most things. I've never seen anyone who doesn't do well with, say, oranges. I've never seen anyone who doesn't do well with, now that I'm saying it, I can think of like one person for everything else at least, but most people get back on most things, if not everything. I will say that gluten is the exception. So if you're thinking, I'm going to do an elimination diet, and then I'm going to get back on gluten after my gut's healed, and I'm going to feel awesome, and I'll be able to eat my pizza and my bread, I'm here to tell you that may not happen. And the reason for that is in this country, in America, we treat our wheat, even our organic wheat gets brought to harvest quicker with desiccants that act like allergens in the gut. Sometimes it's Roundup, which is a weed killer, which is super poison for our microbiome. So if you are a person who really, really, has heard this theory or this myth that, oh, if you do an elimination diet and you stop eating gluten, you'll never be able to tolerate it again. It's kind of not a myth. Like it's kind of true. The truth is you've never really tolerated gluten, but because your gut's so leaky and inflamed, you don't notice the difference when you put it in. And you've got this low-grade simmering inflammation that is a setup for badness later. So if you're not ready to give up your gluten now, I don't think this is a good time for you. And it should be a good time for you. Because that's not a friendly actor anymore, unfortunately. And gluten is found in wheat, barley, and oats and rye. Not all oats contain gluten. They're just contaminated. If you get oats that say certified gluten-free oats on the label, they're okay. But barley, rye, and wheat are the gluten culprits.
That was the other question was about why not tofu. So Thank you. That was the question you saw.
Yeah, I saw Jean answered that. So tofu is made from soy. So soy is
Then,
out.
yeah, and then somebody else asked, what are the tests taken to detect leaky gut? Somebody just asked that.
So there are a lot of different tests. Some people do blood tests looking for antibodies against different foods. And certainly if you have antibodies against foods in your blood, that tells you those foods have gotten through into the blood and created an immune response. So that tells you your gut's leaky. If all those come back negative, it doesn't mean you don't have a leaky gut. I think the best way to determine if you have a leaky gut is to heal it with an elimination diet and see for yourself that on day 3 or 4, you feel kind of lousy. And that's an indication that you're on the right track. Your gut is now detoxing because you've healed it. The cells of the gut don't take very long to turn over. I mean, this is the basis for, why people who have chemotherapy and their guts, they get diarrhea, it goes away within a couple of days once the chemo stops, because the lining of the gut renews every 3 or 4 or 5 days. So a week into the diet, your gut's already turned over. And then the next couple of weeks is just refining it and making sure you're getting the healing you want and developing the practices around eating you want. But really the gut heals within a few days. And that's why you feel lousy on day 3 or 4. I saw another question, another thing up here. But if you guys ask your question before I find it, go ahead and ask it.
There's one here from Sonia. How do you know if a food is beneficial to your body type or not? If
That's what I
it's a
thought.
toxin or a nutrient?
Yeah, thank you. Sonia, are you talking about like the blood group diet, or what are you, or like Ayurvedic doshas? Like what are you referring to in terms of body type? Oh, I'm not sure she's still here. She may have left. Okay, well, I'll answer my imagination of what that question means. So, blood type. So there's a book called Eat for Your Type, I think, Eat Right for Your Type, and it's all about using your blood type, like your A or AB or A positive, O positive, to determine what foods should be on your avoid list. I have tried that diet. I have found that diet for me doesn't represent what my body wants, which I think is interesting. I mean, I really went for it about 15 years ago and tried to see if that was something. And I have patients who swear by it. Like they stay away from the foods that are not supposed to agree with their blood type, and they feel much, much better when they do that. I mean, it's one of those little bits of information that has been life-changing for some people, and others have found it not so much. But you can do an elimination diet using foods that you have learned either from a book or from your own experience are good for you or beneficial for you, as opposed to not. You just pick different proteins, carbs, and vegetables and fats that are for your type. Same is true of like any diet program or any nutrition program you've been on. So if you're on, let's say, Susan Pierce Thompson's Bright Line Eating, you can do this diet as a Bright Lifer or Bright Line Eater simply by choosing foods that are in agreement with those principles. And I still recommend the plate method and carb rules. They're very similar to Susan's way of eating anyway, but there's a lot of ways to morph this diet to make it work for whatever you have found works for you already. Like we don't want to take away anything that works for you already, right? If scoreboard shows something's working, we want to do more of that thing and then tweak what's left to see if we can get you even better. Great questions, you guys. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome for the information. It's my pleasure to share it. Again, this is the thing, we all lived through a pretty big ordeal in the last 3 years. And I spent the first year kind of tearing my hair out because I just felt like if we had talked about stuff like this as a society, I think we could have saved a lot of lives. And I think we could have been a lot happier and a lot less scared, because it's an empowering thing to know that you can actually support your immune system enough to not be at such risk, change your risk, for example. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's one question each. I want to make sure Kathy got my email because she had the gastric emptying done, she said. So I wanted to get the information how it went for her. Yeah, if she could tell me how it was and what she experienced. It'll ease my mind a little bit. Oh, she got it. Okay, she got it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for supporting each other. I love that's happening. All right. Any last questions? Who here's doing this for sure? I'm definitely doing it. Slow learner number one. I am doing this again. Okay, we got Jean, we got Trisha, awesome, Kathy, Jan, Carol, Jerry. We have Sheila, Mary, awesome. Who did I miss? Anyone else? Christine, Jan, Stephanie, woohoo! Bonnie, awesome. It's going to be a great.
Probably, yeah. I'll let you know for sure.
Woohoo! Mark, after his gastric emptying study. Yeah, it's going to be awesome, you guys. It is the funnest part of the year for me. We have so much fun. I mean, people are often like, what do you mean you have fun? You're eliminating foods. And I just get stressed thinking about that. But we actually have fun, right? Like half of you guys have done this before, right? You know, it's fun. That's why you're coming back. It's like, it's a blast. And it's, you know, we become the weirdos together who take thermoses to our family gatherings, you know, who, you know, invite everyone over to eat our elimination friendly foods. One year I did it during Thanksgiving. Who was in the Thanksgiving round when we called it Boost? And I made a whole Thanksgiving dinner that was elimination diet friendly. Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't bad, right? Jerry, how was that pumpkin pie?
It was awesome.
I mean,
My daughter, and then the recipe is still there. So
yeah, all the recipes are there. This course grows every year. We always add stuff. This year, I think we added 80 new recipes. Jerry like transcribed them all from the Facebook group. So some of you guys who are returning are going to see your recipes in our course with your name attached to them. So I hope you're okay with that.
I'm not done yet. There's still more.
There's more.
Finding them. So
It's going to be awesome. So for those of you who are still on the fence, I want to invite you to reach out to us. We're going to end for tonight. We've been going for a couple hours now, and I know it's time for people to go get their sleep so they can wake up without an alarm clock. But if you have questions, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. You can email me and my team at support@KristenRymanMD.com, and we'd be happy to get on a Zoom call with you. Any questions you have, any concerns, anything that's keeping you on the fence. Because if you're on this call still, you're clearly on the fence. You're either in the course already or you're on the fence hovering, trying to figure out which side you belong on. I don't necessarily want you in the course if it's not for you, but if it's for you and this is the right time, I want to help get clear on that together so you can get your butt in the course and we can make it happen for you because it's life-changing. And if you're ready for that, I'm ready to support you. So thank you to everyone for showing up. Thanks for your awesome questions.
Pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you, Mark, and thanks for your great questions. Good luck with your study this week. And
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah,
Really appreciate
sure. And I will send out this replay for everyone who's registered. If you're not registered yet and you want the replay, please email us at support@KristenRymanMD.com. Jerry's putting that in the chat too. And I will see you guys hopefully either in the course or on a Zoom call talking about whether you're going to be in the course or at the next free webinar, and you will have a healed gut because you will have run with this on your own. God bless everyone here. Good luck to everyone.
Good night.
And I'll see you
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
On the
Good night.
Good night.